Hi, we are live. Yay!
Hey, we made it.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the first mental health Monday conversation that I'm having with Napoleon Harrington. If you have been connected to me any type of way in the past 11 years, you've heard Napoleon's name mentioned. Napoleon has been my counselor and has helped me on my journey to healing. He's now my coach since I've crossed state lines. But he's amazing. Married to Faith Harrington. Beautiful story. A new father, the twin girls, which
Two girls.
Identical, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So you have your hands full. Like, you are already crazy busy as it is, from what I know, from just pushing out healing with mental health, getting bills passed in Michigan this past fall, front runner of that, okay? On top of sitting at the board of Oakland University, where you got your undergrad and your grad degree from. Professor, workshop trainer, ministry, like, so busy. So I am so thankful that you took the time for this is my first Facebook Live, and on top of it, to kick off the conversation about mental health. I am not a counselor or a therapist, but I am a huge advocate, and mainly because of the work of what you've done with me. And You're featured in the book, okay? As everyone knows, that's the other thing. If you read my book, Napoleon Harrington is mentioned in this book throughout multiple chapters. So I'm going to just start off with the importance of this being Mental Health Awareness Month. And within communities of color, a lot of times, I know when I grew up, the stigma around mental health and counseling was you crazy people need counseling, right? Or you don't want to get help because, people are looking at you funny or this, that, there, and the other. However, through the years, we're talking about this more and more people are being advocates, more people are being so vocal, especially with merging faith and mental health together, which is huge. And absolutely. I talk about a lot in my story how I knew the word, but you helped me come in. You helped me blend those two words together so that I could take in the word and come to a relationship with Christ. And I'm just so excited for this. And already see we have some comments. Allison says, I feel like I know him already. So see, there's you have some distant cousins that are coming onto the feed, okay? They've heard all about you. So for you being a Black man, right? What was your why when you were coming up on why you wanted to come into the mental health community and want to be a counselor? Can you tell the viewers your story?
Wow. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to even produce this Facebook Live, because mental health is something that has grown to be a very vital thing at the core of my heart and all that I do. And it's funny because as you were naming all the stuff that I've been able to be fortunate to be connected to, the thing that I think is the most valuable now is the thing that happened just recently, which is being a father to those two beautiful daughters of mine now, Isabella and Imani. And hopefully when they get older, Imani's the oldest by 2 minutes. So hopefully she's okay with me saying Isabella's name first. But nothing has driven my heart more now than being a father to those girls. So everything else, when you ask, how did you find the time to do it? Now I don't even know, because I'm lost in them so much. So I needed to say that first, because children have a way of refocusing your life. And I'm grateful for Faith Harrington, my wife. She's allowed me to do a whole lot of things without being too demanding, and she's just been a great person in my life. You know how we have our people, my person, and so I'm grateful that she's been able to do that. And it also kind of helps explain a little bit of the why too. As I was growing up, I grew up in, and I kind of traveled a lot when I was a kid because I was an Air Force brat. We traveled a lot. My father was in the Air Force, retired a captain. And so my brother, my sister, and I, we traveled a lot. So shout out to my brother, sister. Those are my homies. And so we traveled a lot, and my father was not as present. Eventually to the point where my father left the family. He and my mother divorced, and he decided not to come back and really spend time talking to us in a way that was meaningful or developmental. And in a way, in my mind, I couldn't really figure that out. I kind of was wondering, well, why would a person, or why would people, why do people think and behave the way that they do? And so it kind of sent me on a journey to like understand people better. And so initially it was just about understanding people. It wasn't about therapy because I didn't really know much about therapists or therapy. And so it was just about understanding people. And so the further I got into understanding human behavior and kind of answering some of those questions of why people think and behave the way they do, I also found that there was a natural knack that I had to be interested in people. And I kind of felt like I had a gift to actually see them and hear them. So people would find me and they would talk to me, and I would just be talking back and have conversations, and things would be really, they'd be interested. And I'd find myself in situations where I'm helping them and didn't know I was helping them because I was just interested in what they were saying. So long story short, and it's probably too late, it's probably the long story. I got into it because I wanted to understand why people, or more specifically, why my dad would leave and not come back. And so I kind of feel like that set my trajectory on a journey that was exactly where I am today. And I'm grateful. I've been able to do a whole lot of therapeutic work around that piece, even to the degree where he and I had a conversation when I was 26 years old. And so a lot of reparative work happened. And I'm grateful to God for the opportunity to serve in people's lives in the way that I have been. So yeah. That's me.
Awesome. So we met June 2009. And I talk about this in my book, is chapter 17. Actually chapter 16, when I get to like dead ends. And I talk about how I went to the Better Communications for Families, Individuals at New Hope. At that email, and you were there.
It was a 2-day workshop.
It was a 2-day workshop starting on a Friday evening. Okay. Committed. Like, you know what? She is at the end of herself. She is going to this. So I went, and you were just hitting so many different nuggets. And it was one of those where it was, I'm going to the book because you were just going from the time you started, it was like bam, bam, bam. And you went from airplanes with a lot of baggage can't fly to what healthy communication looks like. And are you a destroyer or are you an embracer of relationships, to how you view God is how you view God is based upon your earthly father. And I was like, I'm coming back the next day because I had so many questions, right? And I don't know if you remember, but remember when you were saying that who had questions from the following day. And remember, I raised my hand and I hit you with that ultimate question that had the oohs and the ahs, right? The oohs and the ahs of, okay, if God is so good, then why is this, what do you do if your father is a preacher and abusive to the family? And I remember just the people at my table. I remember the looks around the room, because we were having this in church, in a fellowship hall. And
Absolutely.
the silence the silence that came
Yeah.
after I asked that question, and I was so serious, and you didn't miss a beat. When I asked that question and I brought up abuse in the church, you want to go into what you said and like why you positioned that like that, and then from there you were like, I want to talk to you after. I want to talk to you after. I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble. And then the conversation after that was, have you thought about counseling? So I'll let you go ahead. Why was that important for you in the midst of an environment like that to answer, to be present and to be vocal where you could have been asked to walk out, sir,
Yeah.
can you leave?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I don't remember my exact words, my best guess is that it was extemporaneous and probably downloaded directly from God Himself for me to say it, because
Yeah.
I think the way you heard it was directly the way you needed it, and I'll never forget that day because I remember doing the workshop, and my colleague and I. Dr. Fuqua, I remember we were doing the workshop, and I remember the thing that I remember the absolute most was you would have this puzzled look on your face, and you were writing these notes very viciously. I mean, you were writing, and you would keep looking up like, now come on, like really, but you were writing notes, so I could tell. I was a professor starting to teach college then. And the professor and me looked and saw that you were going to have questions next class. And so when we got there, I was already kind of anticipating the questions, but I didn't anticipate the depth of the question. And the hardest part about doing workshops that are of a nature like healthy relationships and helping people to overcome pain and address wounds and discuss trauma. One of the most difficult things about that is everybody's experience is different, and there is no answer that one size fits all. Yeah. And I remember when you were asking your questions and as you were talking, I just remember thinking, she's ready to work. She's ready to work. And I knew that we were in a church atmosphere, and I have done workshops in churches before, and it's been, the results have been pretty interesting. And I remember thinking, at the risk of being relevant, I'm going to answer this question as much as I can to the core, as opposed to just generally brushing the answer and then making sure that she gets something afterwards that helps to point her in the direction towards healing and hope. Because there are some people who ask questions in workshops like that to stump the person because their pain is unresolved and they choose to keep their pain unresolved. You, on the other hand, you were seeking to resolve your pain. And that was, it just was, I guess maybe it was a sensing that I had that's what you were doing. And so it bled through, and it ended up being the truth, because after work later, I mean, seeing you today fills my heart with like the greatest amount of joy that I think a therapist could experience with somebody who they've worked with.
Thank you. And again, I am the biggest team mental health advocate, team Napoleon advocate to my people in Michigan. I always mention you. And that brings up a good question, where if someone is looking for a good therapist, or if someone is ready to do the work, what recommendations do you have? What would you say to them, especially if they've never branched or tried to go to counseling, and this is a whole new world?
Yeah, well, I'll be frank. The hardest thing to do is to put yourself in a position where you're vulnerable to somebody else and talk about yourself. When you do introductions with people, so often they are like lost on words and they don't know what to say about themselves. Now imagine going to talk to somebody about addressing a problem or something as deep as trauma or a wound. So one of the first things that it takes, I think, is a person to be ready. You it takes at least being ready or willing. Because if you're going against your will, sure, you could have some great effects because of it, but you may not get the work done that you really would hope to get done. So
Yeah.
what you should look for first is your willingness and your readiness to actually handle the process. Number two, find somebody that kind of fits your description. If you would feel better talking to a male or talking to a female or talking to somebody who fits another identity, then figure out what it is that best fits your niche. Because the reality is, our work is based on trust. And if there's no trust in the conversation or in the relationship, then we're only going to reach a certain distance. People who have trusted me have been able to go further distances than other people who they didn't trust. And I've worked with some people who had a limited level of trust with me, got with somebody else to finish the work, and I was just designed to take them to level 2. And the next person took them all the way to level 10 because they just, for some reason, it wasn't a good fit. So fit matters. Think about unique things that are important for you. Oftentimes in African-American communities, we look for African-Americans to talk to because our other counterparts, like white counterparts, outnumber us in the field a lot more than we're in there. So I do my best to encourage as many people to seek us out, because we are out there. We have really cool networks that are out there to help you find African-American therapists to address needs that kind of help to reduce the likelihood that you won't have that color barrier to try to break through either. So I say that to say, there's a lot of unique things that you have to look for in terms of finding a therapy. You got to be willing and ready. You definitely want to find someone who will fit like maybe the gender piece that you need. And also you want to find somebody who fits the spiritual piece that you need. Most therapists will either identify that they're Christian or not Christian or what have you. Find someone who's willing to go there with you, because we are nothing without being able to talk about those pieces of our life. So consider the things that you know are really unique to you, and look for someone that kind of fits as much of that description as possible.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So what are some recommendations where you say for communities of color where mental health is taboo and they don't know that first step to take? They know they want to, they've thought about it, but then when they've talked to someone about it, I hear a lot of times, especially if if it's faith or church, I'm gonna just pray it away. I'm gonna just go to my word. I'm gonna pray that. What would you say to that person that's stuck between, well, does that mean I don't have faith because I go to counseling and I don't feel like Jesus is gonna work this out, or I feel like Jesus is gonna work this out, but I still need counseling? What do you say to that person that's kind of struggling between those?
Yeah, well, I tell people that we live in a natural world, but if they ascribe to a spirituality, or if they ascribe to Christian life, then they also have to live within a spiritual confine. So the reality is, you have to live in a natural world, but be a spiritual person, because we're not human beings having a human experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And so with that said, we have to interface with the world in a way that helps us to navigate as much as we can. So the person who's struggling, trying to figure out, like, do I just pray it away? Because if I just pray it away, then God's the only one that can heal me. Absolutely. God is a healer, and he is one that can resolve all things and make it final and once and for all, heal you. But if you ever take note in passages where Jesus healed folks, you'll notice that there are different places where he healed them and told them to go show themselves to the priest, or go show themselves to someone who could declare them clean if they were lepers. And what that kind of suggests to us is there are people who are professionally designed to help you through a situation after the prayer is over. You are absolutely right. You should go pray. You should fast and seek God about whatever the condition is. But nevertheless, you definitely also want to make sure that you make that accompaniment of going to a natural, from a natural perspective, talk to somebody to resolve the problem. Otherwise, things will still or could continue to be compounded. And God puts natural people on earth to resolve natural things. It's interesting because I hear a lot of people say, yeah, I went to church and I just put it at the altar and I was good. That was it. Some situations are good enough to do that. And some you get up and it's you're resolved. But when it comes back, where are you going to go to get that resolve? How do you get that resolve? And not ever that prayer is not enough, but it's that the accompaniment of therapy that will help to resolve the intensity of the pain or help to teach you new behaviors in order to get through whatever the challenges are. So I try my best to help them see both sides of the picture, both sides of the coin, dismissing neither, showing the value of both, and making sure they understand that it's with clarity that you can make these kind of decisions.
Yeah, that's so good. Now with COVID-19 going on, we have COVID-19 going on. And then we also have, with COVID-19, you have a lot of grief. You have a lot of depression because there's isolation that is happening. What would you say to the person who's watching, who may have never considered therapy? We have teletherapy that's live right now with a lot of mental health professionals. What would you encourage? How could you encourage them or to reach out to a teletherapy professional in this season?
Yeah, well, COVID-19 has taken a lot of us by surprise, and it's amazing. I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine, and he was basically saying that something microscopic can bring the entire world to its knees, and that's exactly where we are. And it's a great position to be in because now we can seek God for the kind of help that we are hoping for. And for the person who's dealing with the grief of some of the things that they've experienced from COVID, I encourage you to take your time while walking through that grief. Grief looks different for every single person. No two people grieve alike. And some people, it might catch up to you a little bit later. Others, you feel it impactful right away. My encouragement is to, as much as possible, try to connect with others so that you can talk through what you're dealing with. You're right. We do have teletherapy that's available. And thank goodness for my colleagues who signed up right away to get into teletherapy so that they can help address some of these concerns. Teletherapy used to be a novelty. It is now a standard because our world is going to dramatically shift after this. And for those of us who are preparing for the shift, we'll be able to navigate it a lot easier. For those who are not, it's going to be a learning curve. It's going to be really difficult. So please feel free to connect with somebody off of teletherapy. There are also apps out there, BetterHelp, and a couple of other apps that you can access and just text therapists. The world of therapy it's a dynamic one, and future outlooks are saying that of all the positions and jobs that are going to be needed in the future, therapists or therapy will always be among the necessity. So I say that to say we're going to be around and we're here to help. And for those who are grieving, don't hesitate to contact somebody or accept somebody's recommendation to talk it through, because it can certainly benefit you in a great way.
Okay, awesome. I'm seeing, wow, this is a great session. What a calming force Napoleon is. Wonderful to see two people living out their anointing. Thank you, Matthew. So Matthew Walls, ladies and gentlemen,
Ah,
is the boss who is named in my book as well, who
wow.
also helped propel me to come to the end of myself, to get help, to do the work, which landed me into Napoleon's office.
Wow.
So love me, Wazzy, that's my boy. Allison, can you share tips for parents to look out for in their kids during this time? That's a great question.
Mm. So parents, whatever you do, don't just place them in front of a device and expect the device to tell them what's happening during this time. Um, have a conversation with them and let them know what COVID-19 is. Help them understand what kind of other things like this have happened in the past and how we've come through those as a nation, as states, as families, and as individuals. Let them know how we've come through it before, to give them some hope. Because I think I just read a recent research statistic that said that kids are experiencing anxiety at a much higher level. We knew adults were, but we didn't suspect that kids would be, because they're missing their friends at school. And they know that it's got to be serious if we don't go to school, because normally for Michigan, it snows the only thing that stops us from going to school.
And
So if this is
sometimes
worse,
snow didn't stop you from going to school.
that's old school. But if snow stops us from going to school, this must be worse than snow. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
kids are a little worried about what to expect. But there's nothing more reassuring than an adult or a parent coming to a kid and explaining things to them so that they're not left to wonder.
That's good.
Use age appropriate language. If they're kindergarten, preschool, if they're a little bit, right around that first grade area, use very simple phrases. Let them know what's happening and why we're quarantined, etc. And then, of course, as they age, use more age-appropriate terms. I can't think of the website, but once I find it, I can share it with you. It might be the CDC, but they have a guideline of how to talk to your kids or teens about what's happening in our society now. So also talk to them about your hopes of what happens after. Kids are suckers for hope. They absolutely love to hear the great side of what's going to happen next. So when you get the opportunity to tell a kid, I really think that we're going to be better people after this, because we're going to be cleaner, because we'll be washing our hands more, and we'll be, to them, they think, so the end will look better than the beginning. And so
Yeah,
they start to have better perspectives about it.
that's good. That's good. So I have one question for you. Like, as a man, how do you encourage other men to embrace mental health, the counseling aspect of it, to take care of their mental health, especially those who are still on the front lines, who are working, providing for families, those who are not working right now and they feel like they're not in the position of provider? What do you say to encourage men to embrace the mental health movement, especially in this month of mental health awareness?
Wow, that one for me is a pretty loaded one for a couple reasons. Um, as a man, there are so many things that you want to do for your family. And of course, I'm talking about men who are actively wanting to be those kind of people for their families. And it's a blow to a man's sense of esteem, his sense of self, when the work that he does or the gift that he offers to the world is muted, or he's laid off, or he is, can't work because of something that he's helpless against. And I would encourage men to remember that you are more than the work that you do. You are who you were designed to be, and that outside of the work that you've done, there's a character and integrity that you have, that if you're able to pick your chin up and throw your shoulders back, and chin not too high and shoulders not too far back. If you're able to see your way through, you'll be able to navigate yourself into another position, possibly even one that you desired to have in the first place instead of working something that you didn't want before. How do you get there? You take as much time as you can to reflect, think about what you want now versus what you had before. Take some time to really apply for places or apply for things that you want now versus than you had before again. But what's important is that you do something. Rest, do something, and keep your faith as intact as possible. Faith is one of those things that if you're not, if you don't pay it enough attention to it, you can malnourish it. It becomes weakened. And when we overwhelm ourselves with things like worries, anxieties, fears, and all of that, I heard Mark Twain say, I've been through so many things in my life, and some of them actually happened. When we start thinking about catastrophic thinking and all of that, we lose our way, and it starts to make our faith weaker than what it was before. Never lose hope. Stay encouraged. Read something that helps to build you up. Watch something that helps to build you up. That your faith can be encouraged again, and eventually get back out into the working world and contribute to society in a great way.
Yeah. And to the man who is still working, but now he's working a whole lot more.
Yes.
And now the mounting pressures of, I do not have an escape because I'm at home. Like, work is now home. There's marriage. There may be also kids, or even to the man that's single, that's still back and forth with mounting responsibilities. How do they take that time to embrace their mental health?
Yeah. Well, I think most important, everybody deserves to find at least an hour out of their day where they get to slow down long enough and think about what they want in their lives, where they are, and find some sort of peace. Because the truth is, if there's no mental health for self, there can be no mental health for anyone else. And like, your engagement with other people will be terribly skewed. Your ability to do things, and your job will be affected negatively if you don't take the time to find that personal mental health. Relationships will start to deteriorate if you don't take the time to respect and love your mental health. If there's no mental health, there's no health overall, which is why mental health is so vital for us to take care of. And so I say to the person who's overworking, find pockets of time as much as you can to slow down long enough and catch your breath. Everybody needs to at least get the ability to slow down, breathe, know that you're okay, because that's important.
Yeah. Now, what do you say? So one of the things in our sessions a lot, I was tired, okay? I was going to counseling. I committed to it. I signed up. I was going. But there were some days the work was just, I don't feel like doing this today. And it came to a decision where I was either going to stand up or I was going to shrink, whether I was going to tell you the truth on how I was feeling or I was going to lie. What do you give to that person that's like, okay, I tried this, I started it, but it's taken me through a whole lot more emotions than I planned on having? What do you say to them to continue to do it, to get the results?
It's I try as much as I can to, imperfectly, but I try as much as I can to prepare people for those moments. I want them to know that there's going to be days that you want to lie to me. There's going to be days that you're going to, you're just not going to feel it. Yeah, I know.
You said that to
there,
me.
there are going to be days where you just don't feel it. And there are going to be times where you're going to hit a wall and you're going to you might need a break from therapy, or you might need to slow down for a second again to take that rest, catch your breath. Because I want you to have mental health while you're trying to resolve traumatic challenges while you're addressing mental health. So the reality is, every person who commits to the work is going to find themselves in some kind of conundrum while they're in therapy, which is the whole crux and the beauty of this thing. You're going to find yourself challenging yourself in a way that will bring something out of you that you never expected would come out, or something that you've been waiting on. So the end, to me, with this regard, justifies the means. So if you're in therapy and you're finding yourself like, nah, I think I need, nah, this is, I'm not going to tell him that, or I don't know about this. I encourage you to don't think about the person who's sitting across from you. Think about the person who's waiting on you to be you.
Yes, that's so good.
Think about yourself. Think about where you need to go. Think about what's going to happen if I tell this truth, or what's going to continue happening if I continue in this story or in this lie or in this rhetoric that I've told myself. And sometimes people don't even know or realize that they're not telling the truth. They just don't know. And they need skilled professionals to help them bring up the inconsistencies, or show that you said this, but this is what you feel. And we've got to show the conflict so that as they attempt to try to resolve the conflict, something better and something more beautiful comes out. So I love that, because we've signed up to walk with people through pain and suffering and through difficult times. So a skilled clinician will help you clear up a lot of that.
Yeah. So I'm chuckling because I talked about in my book that I did that.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about where I was being completely transparent with you, and in being completely transparent with you, I felt like you came from my throat. Like you said, like, I hear this. You specifically said it. Like, I hear this, but this is what this is saying. And I felt like you were against me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to hear that. I felt like you were supposed to be on my side, and I kind of took offense to it, but it was good because therapy gave you that different perspective where you're not supposed to be on my side. So can you talk to the person who may feel, or who may have walked away from therapy because the counselor didn't say something that went with what they believe or their perception? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit more of
Wow.
like, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we're friendly people, but we are not your friends. And that's the allure about going to therapy, is you get the opportunity to talk to somebody who's not related to you, who's not your good friend, who's not, who has an objective view about what your conversation is or whatever you're presenting in therapy. And they get to take that information that you give them, and they help you either find the red thread or help you come to some resolution. And sometimes they do descend into the particular to find one thing or another, because descending into that particular helps us to figure out, oh, this might be a more specific issue. And we might even turn into like mental surgeons a little bit on the mind, and pull out things and go, did you see this? I found this while you were talking. When your friends would sometimes might go, honey, let me tell you, he ain't no good, or girl, let me tell you, or man, did you see this, or what have you. So our job is to be as objective as possible, but not as invasive to the degree that it harms the person or offends a person. And I, just to kind of think of it from another perspective, if you're offended in therapy, that gives me the impression that something's working. And if every session is like a chum fest and everything's great and it's good, then perhaps you might have found a good friend who, I don't know, you're paying. But unfortunately, a lot of times that does become the case. The most healthy thing to do is to find someone who helps you to get to a space where you're experiencing something that you're not used to experiencing that comes from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Listen, okay, you're going to be tweeted out. I have so many nuggets that I'm taking from this, and I'm also posting. And this replay will also be available on our YouTube page as well, the D.O.V.E.S Network YouTube page, because, man, this is why you're my therapist for 6 years. And then you even brought in, you helped AJ and I in our beginning years as well. And I know you've changed your practice now where you don't do couples together anymore. But I would just tell you, and AJ and I had a conversation. We did an interview last Wednesday just talking about what we had to unlearn and learn. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the face, okay? This is this man who came in the beginning of our marriage to help equip us with tools and that was a testament of growth right there too. I did the work and you helped stand by me to do the work, to be healed as a single woman, to when I was healthy and whole enough to receive my husband. But now it's like there were the new triggers and I didn't know which tools to pull out, but had I not, it made it easier to be able to pull those tools because I did the work prior. So thank you.
Yeah, God is so good. I feel really fortunate to be able to help people get to certain spaces in their life. And because the truth is, I don't know who anybody is supposed to be, and I don't know where they're supposed to go. And if people walk through my door, there's something about them being there that I'm supposed to respond to help them get to the spaces that they're supposed to be. Yeah. Some people will never come to therapy. I know that. And so my responsibility to anybody I serve is that if I'm able to help that person in a remarkable way, then they will go talk to the person who will never come see me. And before you know it, we've got a chain reaction of some great things happening and people being healed all over the place. And only one person went to a therapist. So a good friend of mine, Mr. Huddleston, used to always say, each one reach one. And yes. I think that's a part of my philosophy with this is that everybody should be able to reach out to somebody as a result of being in therapy and resolving stuff that they've had from therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Do you have any closing thoughts, any closing tips that you want to give to those who are watching or who will watch this later?
Wow. For people who have been thinking about going to therapy, why wait? There is a destined future waiting on you. And all it takes is a little bit of courage to get through some of those fearful moments, some of those scary times. I do know it's going to be scary. It's going to be frightful. You're gonna have some points where you're not going to know what to do. But as you're walking with a skilled clinician, they will help guide you in the best path, guide you. They won't tell you where to go. They will guide you. Because we don't know who you're supposed to be. We just expect greatness. I mean, we just love to see when people are, when they resolve stuff and they become the version of themselves that they absolutely love. So I encourage you, don't wait any longer. I also, if I could, I want to say thank you to every person who's ever gone to a therapist. If you've ever gone to a therapist, I want to say thank you, because what you've done is you've created a great tidal wave in our society or throughout time to help validate why it's so important to be mentally healthy and why it's so important to be emotionally well. pass it along, continue to share the message. That takes courage too. Have courage when you don't see your way through anything else. So I think those are my, I guess, biggest closing statements. I mean, there's so much more to be said. And so I already know you got the mental health wellness thing going for a couple of weeks. So bring some of my colleagues on, have them
for sure
share as much as they can, because
yes.
mental health is key and it's important. And I gotta say, I can't leave without saying I'm tremendously proud of everything that you've been able to accomplish in this. I mean, a book, like seriously, like folks, a book, not only a book, being able to go to podcasts and spread the message. And you, to me, are the example of what happens when someone takes their work seriously, when they invest in themselves. And now I worked with you, and look what happens. You are impacting thousands. You see what I mean? So the joy that I have is being able to invest the work in you, and you go chase thousands. That's, to me, that's what this is about. So I'm tremendously proud of you. Shout out to AJ. I'm so glad that he's doing the investment piece. So thank you. Thank you.
Because a counseling session with you honestly can't go without tears. So it's only natural that you have me in these streets crying in front of the people. Okay. Okay. So there is a question before you go.
Okay.
And that is also why you're the courage counselor.
Okay.
What if another issue comes up during therapy and the sessions start to focus more on that instead of what you initially came in for? Should you just roll with it? That's a great question, Erica.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the priority. So, for example, you and your clinician will help to determine what is the priority thing that needs to be addressed. If a competing issue comes up, you and your therapist will get to determine how much attention gets placed on that priority or gets placed on that issue, and then you both navigate that conversation from there. So I say that to say, in your spare time, Erica, make sure that you're looking at how much of a priority that needs to be placed on that issue. And is it fundamental to you reaching the goals that you guys have determined? So it's not uncommon, because life happens. It completely, I can't imagine a time that it hasn't really happened. But what we've always decided to do is keep the priority. And if there was a need to address something else, we always get that opportunity to. So address the core priority, and the other things tend to sometimes handle themselves. But if they need more attention, give it the appropriate attention it deserves. Not anymore.
Okay, that's good. That's so good. So with that, we're going to just go ahead and end it. I want to thank you so much for kicking off this series for Mental Health Mondays, and especially with Mental Health Awareness Month. I had to start with you. Because obviously, I mean, you got me crying on. Yeah. So thank you so much for taking time out.
I'll probably cry later.
So the replay will be available. Please tell Faith I said hello. I'll let you get back to your beautiful twin daughters. And we'll see you guys next week. We have another phenomenal mental health therapist coming on. Talea Hunter Williams will be coming on, and she's going to be talking about the importance of mental health with mom and daughter, right? As we're coming off of Mother's Day. So that is going to be a good one, because that's her specialty, is adolescent, teen girls, and women. So we definitely want to tune in next week. And we'll be in touch. Have a good night, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you.